Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's exciting to always present at conferences, and this is a great conference. And I think that we live in a time of just accelerated innovation in education, as we're seeing just so many different new things that are coming out with integrating ed tech with research-based strategies and really focusing on personalized learning and differentiating for all students. We tend to always usually focus in our K-12 schools on English language learners, special education a lot. And I think now more than ever, we have the opportunity to really focus on everyone and really can do it strategically. So I'm going to go through this presentation now. If you guys would like to join the Pear Deck, you guys can join in on the interactive. With the interactive is that, there's going to be some instances where I'll ask you to respond. And then if you want to write some individual thoughts about what I'm talking about, maybe to apply to what you are doing in your classroom in schools, because just what I am focusing on, you guys are probably doing a lot out there as well. So I want you guys to really focus, as resources yourselves, because you guys are all experts in this as well. So I like the idea that we live in a world now where if we infuse pedagogy, social networks, and research instructional strategies, we can really focus on really putting our learners regardless of their ability level. So I'm going to get started on the Pear Deck presentation, and you guys all have the link of the traditional slides on the website, I believe. So I'm going to get started. So really, this is going to have three components. We want to think about what are some great ways to integrate EdTech instructional strategies to differentiate for GATE learners. And these strategies can also be used for all learners. It just depends on how you're going to aim them. Then we're going to focus on really integrating EdTech tools to make engaging lessons for any sort of setting. I think a lot of people don't realize is that when we're an online or blended session or blended learning setting, is that really if we have our what I call the online instructional infrastructure of EdTech tools integrated with strategies, we can literally teach anywhere at any time, regardless of our setting. And I think that as more and more teachers and leaders become more aware of that and have some more training in this, it's going to really help us really revolutionize where we're currently at. And then the last part of this presentation is really going to focus on how can we create opportunities for students to create, be problem finders and solvers in real world problems. And just with a dose of really, we have the opportunity now to share what we're doing with everyone in the world, what we're doing in our classrooms, and for our students to build their own platforms. And I think that creates the agency and choice for our students to really be in the driver's seat of their learning. As I said, there's three parts, about 15 minutes per. So I'm going to, there'll be a couple times where if you have questions during the presentation, I'll take a couple within the chat. But we'll try to leave a lot, some time at the end for some Q&A. So just as you guys know, at the GATE standards, depth, complexity, acceleration, and novelty, these are all areas that, relate to these standards, but can be really amplified with what we're doing with technology and being strategic and pragmatic with how we're using it for our learners. So really, more than ever before, we're in a position to really focus on these areas. And it's kind of amazing what we can do. So let's focus on part one, integrating instructional strategies with EdTech. So social emotional learning right now is probably the most, I think, important area for all of our students, regardless of their ability level. I'm always Maslow before Bloom. And for us as leaders and teachers, we have to provide opportunities for our students to focus on really being self-aware of their emotions and then understanding the emotions of others so that we can develop, skills like grit, perseverance, self-reflection, because these are all aspects of lifelong learning that regardless of how much we innovate in terms of technology in our lifetimes, if we have those abilities, we'll have more of an opportunity to be lifelong learners. And that's going to be essential in the world that we live in today. So if you guys would like, I focus on this for all my learners, regardless of their age level. I do this with my grad students. So I like to talk about the notions of self-care and mood. So I like having my students assess where they are with their self-care as well as their mood, because these two combined really, we can have students that are really stressed and anxious, and they can be a gifted learner, and they're not going to be in a position to want to innovate and do things differently. So I want us as learners to assess all these areas and then think about how are we going to put these into practice, and also connect that to our mood and understand that we have more than one mood or emotion that we're going through on a daily basis. And if we're aware of this, then and aware of this of others, then we're going to be in the position to, build our emotional intelligence and our intellectual intelligence so that we can innovate. So I like to do this at the beginning of any sort of class session that I'm doing. And sometimes I lead into, you'll see in a moment, either a flip grid where they talk about like, how am I going to practice self-care during the weekend? Or how am I going to practice one of these self-care areas today? As well as how's my mood related to what's going on in my self-care? These are extremely important things for our learners. And what's great is about using like a tool like Pear Deck, Nearpod, Mentimeter, whatever type of interactive slides that you're using, you can essentially gauge where everyone's at, and it can be anonymous, and it allow your students to see where everyone is at on the scale and really understand that, especially, not everyone's circumstances or feelings are the same. So having that self-awareness of yourself and having some understanding of others in your community is really, really important in the age that we live in, especially when you're working with people in a distance scenario or in a blended scenario. You're not going to see everyone. So these are all really essential things that we can do at the beginning of our class session, and that could lead us into like a formative assessment scenario. So this really leads into having students now explain how you feel and why. And this can be either used in a format like this, or it can be used on Flipgrid. It can be, you can move them into something like a Wakelet, which is going to be something like them providing like a meme of how they're feeling, or allow students to connect something that is completely different than just having them explain. It's really key that we have them do this. And if you guys take a look after if you guys would like to do this, explain how you feel and why, there's a great, this just came out. And if you are a secondary teacher or leader to Central, they surveyed, students in the Chicago public schools, and they talked about social well-being and school connectiveness. And it's related to like academic efforts, grit, academic engagement, and really it adds a ton of high value to achievement. So when we're focusing on areas of social emotional development for our students, it's going to put all of our students in a position to succeed more. So it's essential that we create opportunities for our students to build their social emotional development regardless of their level. And depending on your student population, you can have them articulate, how are they feeling and why in a variety of different ways. So I think that this is a really powerful way for us as teachers to engage our students, have them self-reflect, and build these social development skills that are essential for today's world. You could be the smartest person in the room, but if you have a low social emotional intelligence, then you're going to be in trouble because you're not going to be able to handle the stresses of the modern world. So the next strategy today is Wakelet. So let's take a moment here and take a look at the mass brainstorm strategy. So I want you guys right now, if you guys can, click add to collection, and then I would like you guys to write down the engagement strategies. So here we go. So if you could add to the collection, I want you guys to click here and then click on the green dot and click on the add button. And I want you guys to add whatever you would like here, whether it's tweets, images, and upload PDF, etc. And using a tool like Wakelet allows your students of all levels to engage at different levels on this. So I highly suggest using a tool like this, and it'd be great if everyone provided any sort of like engagement strategy that they're using with their GATE students now to brainstorm. This is an amazing tool that you can use, and you can lock it once you're done. And students of different ability levels will be able to find different things online, create videos, can create their own graphics, really whatever tools that they have, they can integrate here. So I'm going to give you guys about a minute or so to look through this, and you'll eventually see your colleagues writing something. And people can pop in images, tweets. You can integrate like a flip grid. Just giving your students options is important. And just this could be on any topic. It could be a quick write. It could be a research project. It could be students sharing their digital portfolio links, which we could talk about later, into a class. Like this could be your class website, your class digital portfolio that you could share to the community, to the world. So this is something that I really enjoy doing. And I think providing your students opportunities with choice is essential for gifted learners. So I'm going to move on. And this is just a strategy that you guys can do with Wakelet, Google Docs, Slides, Padlet, Nearpod, Collaborate. You're choosing a topic, then think of, you want to activate your students' prior knowledge or provide them some sort of outlet for them to bring something of their own to the table, like a text, image, videos, memes, etc. So these are essentially things that you can do at the beginning of a lesson. It could be even at the end of a lesson. It could be a formative assessment at the end of the lesson. And it can be a place where you curate content to be shared to a greater audience, whether it's your school, your district, or the world itself. So this is really, I think, a really great strategy for all students, and it can be done in any setting. So I want to move on to part 2, digital portfolios. And I really like this graphic right here, thinking of George Couros, 8 things to look for in today's classroom. And I think these all relate to all students, but I think, GATE students, especially because they can take these to, essentially a different level. If we give them voice and choice, I think the top two are essential because then that gives them the agency to want to innovate. So I think that all these characteristics, if we can incorporate these within our lessons and within our students' digital portfolios, then we are going to be in a position to really provide them avenues to be innovative. So I think digital portfolios can be used in any setting. You could have students, for example, in an asynchronous environment where they're working independently. This could be, while they're online at home one day, or even in an online classroom for their asynchronous time. You want to create choice boards and have students create different things related to those choices for their digital portfolio that relate to the content that you're working on in class. And then just have one location for your students to upload these artifacts, these to their, whether it's a learning management system like Seesaw, Google Classroom, or something like EduBlogs or Google Sites or Wakelet. It's going to allow, students to really have a reach in the world. So I'm going to click on a whole class digital portfolio. And I think this is huge for if you're going to be willing to share student work with the world. And digital portfolios, like I said, can be at the student and class level. So I think providing opportunities for example, you have class blogs here. You can have Rachel's blog, Emma's blog. These are all related to students in the class, and they have their blogs featured, and you can share them with the world. And I think if students have that, it's huge for them. So I'm going to show you a Wakelet one, which is, I think this one's really quite good. So his digital portfolio here has multiple activities, has his own reflections, like what are some learning activities from class. And then he talks about different job roles that he's been in, or research, different types of classwork and ideas. I think that these are huge. Wakelet is free. Yep. 100% free. So this is one example. And then another example is this. And this could be just, this is all the features that this person enjoys, and it can include work from their classes, things that they're interested in, podcasts they participated in or built themselves, just articles that they've written. So this is why I really like Wakelet, because students can customize it, and then you can share it on your class blog. And then Google Sites obviously is another one that's really good. So essentially, if you have these elements within your student's digital portfolio, we want our students to reflect. So the blog is huge. Having students reflect on their learning and practice. So you can make it accessible to just the students, just to you. You can set that. So there's different privacy settings for all these applications, of course. And you can share what you want to, the public and just for your classes. So having the blog to reflect, and then, if you're at the secondary level, you want your students to maybe share where their research is or what they've been researching. That you could put their research articles there that they've researched, or a summary of their research. Then have artifacts, evidence of their learning, like a presentation that they provide to the class, their own podcast, media that they've created. I don't think Wakelet is really truly a huge bandwidth issue, but and I think also too with creating digital portfolios, especially at the middle school and secondary level, these can be things that transform into a virtual resume over time. And I have all my teacher candidates create their own digital portfolio, because I believe that that is, if you can show that you're a reflective learner, a lifelong learner, and provide evidence of learning, to me, that's so much more powerful than a resume that shows, really who you are, how you've learned, and what you've been able to create. And if we provide our students that platform, then it's going to ultimately help them navigate this world. So just these are some just ideas for platforms. So Google Sites, Wakelet, EduBlogs, oh my gosh, what's this one? Blogger, Weebly, and WordPress. These are all avenues that you can go on. They have their pros and cons. Just depends on what you prefer and what your students would prefer. And depending on the age of the students as well. I think Wakelet is friendly for all ages. Google Sites is, I think, probably third grade up. Then WordPress and Weebly are probably more secondary geared, and EduBlogs are more secondary geared. So really depends on your students, but these platforms are really important. And I think having our students build these portfolios provides them avenues for them to innovate, do things that they would like, and have the opportunity to share what they're doing with their classmates and people from around the world. So part 3 relates to the following. We want really using EdTech tools to find and solve real world problems and amplify learning. So we want to use tools that students are going to be using in the workforce, and we want to create tasks that have real world applications, but also have real world reaches. And I think with the advent of social media and just how interconnected we are globally, I think the idea of sharing things is huge. And you can be sharing things that's anonymous. You could have a class Instagram where the work is anonymous, but it's the opportunity to share. And then coupled with the opportunity for students to investigate topics like climate change, plastic in our ocean, self-care, and then focus on creating innovative projects with solutions that can be shared. So these are just some opportunities and tools I really love for secondary and middle school. Google Data Studio for math. I think taking real-time data and having your students play with it is something that we haven't been able to do in the past. And the students can create graphics. They can create, some statistical analysis depending on their level of mathematics. And then taking all this here with these tools, and then using social media and the ability to podcast to share our knowledge to others in the world. So these are all, I think, essential when we're thinking about finding and solving real world problems, using these platforms to work on these in your classes. I think choice boards is a way as an instructor to do this for all your learners, and you can strategically create choice boards for different types of learners, regardless of either their GATE, English language learners, special education. You can create these choice boards. And when it comes down to it, we're in a place where we can do this. I was going to do breakout rooms, but I realized we only have 45 minutes to do this. So I just want you guys to know that like in a blended learning environment, you could have choice boards related to like a station. You can use, for example, adaptive learning as one of the station to personalize learning for all your students, depending on their level, like iReady, MobyMax, Freckle. And then you can have another station that focuses on creating some sort of content or collaborating with their classmates, and then really creating opportunities for them to share it with their classmates, students in their school, parents, etc. These are some great resources for these extension activities or for your choice boards. I really, really like looking at procon.org for argumentation, looking at environmental data, like our forest.info shows the effects of deforestation and like what's going on in regards to that around the world. like economics and careers for students to investigate careers that they may be interested into, and you can create tasks that's associated with that. And then, like I mentioned earlier, Google Data Studio, being able to look at real-time data and having students, work with that data and really evaluate, transform that data and come up with their own conclusions. And this is a really great graphic I like for the notion of Genius Hour. And just provides all these different opportunities for students. And I think by providing, all learners, including GATE learners, with these opportunities to create and innovate, and creating, structure, but some open-endedness to it as well, provides your students to be in the position to, giving them that choice. And every classroom has its own routines and dynamics that you can essentially put into the Genius Hour. And then just, this is an example of a really great choice board. Amanda Sandoval is amazing at making choice boards. You could have all your students focus on these 3 activities, or you could have multiple types of choice boards for different groups of students that have different levels of text. For example, the reading could be different Lexile level text. The video could be the same video, but the vocab activity might be a little bit different. And you can hyperlink it there. And then, having the opportunity for your students to create these types of artifacts of learning, I think is huge. Whether, they're a GATE learner, English language learner, this incorporates elements of the universal design for learning, and it provides these opportunities for students to demonstrate their learning in a variety of different ways. And I think that is essential for us as teachers in this world that we live in. Yes, there'll be link. There's a link. I'll put the slide link at the very end. So this basically, I wanted to give plenty of time for question and answers. I know that I went through things quite quickly. I know that I want you guys to look at the information that I'm providing for this in the slides. I'm going to give you the link right now. It's also, I believe, in the program. So here's the link to the presentation that's shared. You guys can view all the links, all the resources. My goal of this was, I'm presenting to a wide audience of instructors. You guys are all doing different things, but I wanted to create a level of open-endedness and show you guys a variety of different avenues you can take your different classrooms and things that you're doing. So I'm gonna open up for some Q&A for about 5 to 8 minutes. You can check out my blog and website at matthewrhodes.com. I have about probably 25 blog posts that talk about the integration of EdTech tools and strategies. I have a book called Navigating the Toggle Term, which allows us to toggle instructional settings, so moving between online, blended, and traditional settings seamlessly. There's a framework for that within that book, and I'm coming out with a new book in early 21 that is going to be like a second edition, but it's going to have much more content, and it's really, I think will be a go-to guide for K-12 teachers and leaders to navigate the world that we're living in, not just now during the pandemic, but beyond, as we're seeing just such immense acceleration in instruction and integration of EdTech that we're not going back to what it was before the pandemic at all. So, so with that said, navigating the toggle term, it's right here on the last slide. Navigating the toggle term. It's the first book, and then the next one's coming out in early 21 under the same type of title. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Dr. Rhodes, you do have a couple of questions from before. Would you mind if I read them to you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Chat?
Go ahead.
So someone asked, do you think third graders can do this? Would it be too difficult at this time? I think they were referring to the Wakelet.
The Wakelet is, I think, just the way that, for example, you can just click on a third grader, I think could, for example, click edit collection. And then if you just tell them to add a a green box, I think that I think we underestimate sometimes our students in terms of what they can do, especially if you create routines. One strategy that I like to do, by the way, is that when I'm presenting anything to students, I screencast everything. So I use Loom. So I screencast really essentially everything that I do. So when we're in a live synchronous environment, um, I use Loom all the time to really screencast what I'm doing and providing that within my learning management system like Google Classroom and Seesaw and whatever I'm using, so that they can always go back and review the directions and the sequence of steps.
Someone else, Janice, also asked, what about student safety? Who has access? Thank you.
So these are all, like I said earlier, is that you can create, for example, public, private, and unlisted. So you can invite specific people on Wakelet, for example, like contributors, and you can really manage like how they can share the information. A contributor doesn't have the ability to share it out to the public, only the administrator. So you can keep it pretty secure. And all these things can be quite secure regarding just who has the ability to share the links and who has the ability to share it out. And I think curating it on like your own classroom blog or Instagram where, things are anonymous, but you have the ability to show kind of like samples of what's going on. I think that is, a really powerful tool. And you have to always talk to your districts and schools about some of these things before you go do it, which I recommend. But generally, I think that the privacy issue can be solved.
There's another question about, does this pull on the bandwidth during Zoom calls? I know that Nearpod and Pear Deck can be challenged when kids don't have strong internet connectivity.
So Pear Deck does, Nearpod does. Unfortunately, yeah, interactive slides do. But what you could do is create a slideshow on Google Slides, which is with live links. And to me, that you can create engaging strategies that way as well. My next presentation today is actually just going to be through Google Slides, and every link that I have is live. So that takes them to like a live Google Slide that they can edit themselves, or a Wakelet they can edit, a Google Doc they can edit, etc. So there's ways to do it without having like a tool like Pear Deck and Nearpod or Mentimeter that do take up that bandwidth.
Awesome. And then the next question was, I'm finding grading and managing ClassKick challenging. Can you give some suggestions for management of choice board work in Google Classroom?
So, for example, I like to keep the same templates. So you keep a similar template, and all you really do is change the activities behind the hyperlinks. So you can create, like, for example, these are the similar types of things that students can do for these choice boards. But really all you have to do is go in and change like the reading, the video, the vocab. And you don't have to change these very often here, these opportunities or whatever ones that you want to do for your students. Just depends on when you want to do that. I think that if you have like a common choice board for your class, then that really will help. And I think the grading piece is that you shouldn't be grading everything that you're in any sort of environment. Don't grade everything that your students are doing, because that's, to me, I'm a type person where I guess I'm more sometimes like project based, or I really just focus on a lot of my formative assessment, which is really like automated, or I provide feedback in real time, and I don't really focus on giving a point value to everything. To me, that saves me a lot of time, but I'm providing feedback. To me, feedback is more important than grades. You don't need to worry about grades for students in general all the time. Focus on just feedback and then grading strategically. That will save you time.
And the last question is, we use Google Slides and Docs, and we want to have the best website for kids to share their work and look at each other's work, as well as create a project together. What app or website can you direct me to for second and third grade?
I'd say Wakelet or Google Sites. Those are probably the simplest two that they could use. And you could basically essentially create a template on Google Sites and share that to your students. And then they can make a copy of it, and then they have the template. Also for Wakelet, you could have really build in an infrastructure for them, and then they just fill it in. So I think that those scenarios for younger kids is the easiest way. Build the template and then share it with them. And then they can, you build routines about how they're filling in those pieces of that template over time.
So thank you very, oh, there's the one last question. Can we use your templates?
Yes.